What's happening, guys? Welcome to podcast I don't know what number it is, but welcome to the David F. Haas podcast. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. Today's podcast, is the world ending? Are we all going to die? I think these are the questions that are like really pressing. We have so many things going on right now. We have the coronavirus. We have big pharma and vaccines. Are you for it? Are you against it? We have big tech, freedom of speech. We have big hedge funds and the movement, the Reddit movement and GameStop. We have climate change. We have lockdowns, socialism, communism, end of democracy. There's literally endless seeming problems in the world. And it's almost, I don't want to say it's impossible because it's definitely not impossible, but it's extremely hard to not find yourself getting wrapped up in everything that is going on out there, right? And what I wanted to do today is just trying to give you guys, the listener, the people that take the time to listen to this podcast, the spiritual seeker, the person who's willing to look within, the tools to handle all of this craziness that's going on. And I think I should be able to do that because I myself have been able to remove myself from it. But I'm not immune to it. I found myself in the early days of this thing getting wrapped up in all of it and having arguments with friends and family and judging people and everything. And then luckily, because of the work I've done, I was able to come to this place of awareness and say to myself, whoa, what the hell is going on back right now? I'm slipping back into my old ways. I'm slipping back into the judgment. I'm slipping back to not having acceptance for others. I'm slipping back into anger. And so that realization just stopped me dead in my tracks and said, what's happening? What am I doing normal? What am I doing now that I wasn't doing before, that I used to do, that was able to keep me on the path? What's the path? The path is the pathway to surrender, right? The pathway to ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom comes from within. It's not about adding anything out there. It's about learning to become free of everything that you've bought into and everything that ego has told you is true. So in this podcast, what I want to do is give you the tools. I'm going to go through 10 tips in a bit on how you can redevote your way of being to looking within and to becoming the state of spiritual growth. And that's not really said properly, but becoming spiritual, becoming a person who is free from everything that's going on out there. How about that? You will no longer, just by listening to this podcast, you'll move one step closer to no longer being affected by anything that is going on out there, because you will have all the tools. And they actually, to tell you the truth, you already have all of the tools. It's just a matter of learning how to unprogram from everything that you've bought into so that those tools can be revealed to you. Okay, so I think the big thing that most people are struggling with is they're on one side or the other of all of these issues, right? And the ego's primary function is to be right. And a lot of our time and energy, I'm finding, is getting caught up in proving that we are right and feeling the need or the duty to tell other people that they are wrong and we are right, and trying to get them to see our point of view. And this is a classic ego-driven pattern. The ego is all about getting. It wants to constantly get the confirmation that it's right. And in doing so, it believes it needs to tell you that you are wrong. But when we learn to take this step back, we learn to be able to see things from all perspectives. And we see the beauty in all. Even in the people that are on the other side of this argument, you can see the beauty in all things. Nothing that is happening in this world today was created by God. Okay? So it is all created by ego-driven desire. Okay? So it's driven by me needing to prove you wrong, or them needing to prove me wrong, or they thinking they know what is best. So they are going to block your speech, right? And then you thinking because they're blocking your speech, you know what is best, and you feeling the need to get up on the soapbox and tell everybody that they have it all wrong and they need to wake up. Ultimately, every single person's own level of consciousness is their own responsibility. And we are going to be fighting an uphill battle if we are in the game of trying to change people. Okay? One of the biggest things I needed to realize as I went down this road was I had to let go of my desire to change the world, right? I had to let go of my desire to change other people. I had to let go of my desire for people to see things the way I was now seeing them. And it's a difficult thing to do because the big argument against that is, well, what about all the major movements in the world? You know, they were created by protest, and I think of like Martin Luther King and civil rights and these types of things, and these were created by movements of the people. But ultimately, what was happening was, I believe, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but this is just what I think, is that people were drawn to the level of consciousness of an individual, and that level of consciousness naturally is attracting, and people seek out people that are at higher states of consciousness. Now, sometimes low states of consciousness can also be attractive, right? The state of consciousness of desire, which is relatively low on the scale of consciousness, can seem really attractive. And you hear it preached about all the time over the internet. Like, you got to have that desire, you got to have that drive, you got to have that ambition. There's a line from a Kanye West song, that says, he's got that ambition, baby. Look in his eyes. This week he's mopping floors, and next week it's the fries, right? And that ambition is completely tied to the belief that we are our bodies and we are our minds. And in order to become free of all of this, we ultimately need to let go of all fears. Okay, so Hawkins said that all healing is a result of releasing fear. And that is what is ultimately happening when we are being triggered by all of these things that are going on in the world. It's tapping into our fears. And what is at the root of our fears, right? This is an amazing time, an amazing opportunity in the history of our world to really look at what we are fearful of, right? So if you look at communism and socialism, we're fearful that our freedom is going to be taken away. Okay, so if you want to understand what true freedom is, read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, right? This guy was in the concentration camps during World War II, and he was able to still see the good in all. He was able to come out of it, survive it, and still see the beauty of life. Okay, that is ultimate freedom. It doesn't come from out there. It can't be taken from anybody. So just having that realization, okay, so that taps into the fear of your freedom taking away. Well, now we've recontextualized that because your freedom cannot be taken away. All right. You look at the lockdowns, and now they're reducing they're limiting your ability to make money, to socialize with your friends, to interact with the people that you want to interact with. If you're on the other side, it's a necessary tool to combat this disease that is out there. Okay, so if you're on the first side of it, where you're feeling like you're like, for me, for example, I got caught up in like the government's taking my ability to earn an income away, right? But if you allow that belief to happen, then yeah, you're going to be consumed by that. What you hold in mind tends to manifest. So the more that you think that the government is holding you back, the more, guess what? The government is going to hold you back, or the more you're going to be held back by that belief system. If you're on the other side of it and you believe that there's a disease out there that's coming to get you, and you need to inject something into your body in order to protect yourself from that disease out there, well, then it's about realizing that all health comes from within. We don't need to inject ourselves with anything at any time in order to be healthy, right? Health is comes from at the physical level, which is diet, exercise, these things that you hear people preach about all the time, right? Getting out into nature, these types of things. But it's also emotional, right? It's also mental. So we need to be able to be healthy at all levels, and especially spiritually, which is what we're going to get into in a little bit here in the podcast. So we want to be healthy at all levels. And, you know, for me, I'm not perfect either, right? I consider myself a relatively healthy individual. I'm a vegetarian, but I still have a sweet tooth, right? And this is a struggle that I've been going through for a long time. And I'm getting to the roots of this whole thing. I'm going to become free of it soon. But this pandemic highlighted for me, maybe I'm not taking care of myself as well as I could be. I'm not looking for a solution out there. I'm not looking for someone to inject something into my arm to protect me. I'm going to take responsibility for my own health and protect myself by changing my lifestyle. Okay, so I guess it's about blame passing. So if you're in the blame passing game, and I don't want to be one-sided on this, so I'm trying to scale this back or pull this back. And it's hard sometimes when I'm making these podcasts because I'm just trying to flow and I want the conversation to seem to keep your attention, and I don't want to have long pauses of silence. So sometimes it's hard for me to connect to exactly what's going on. But ultimately, anytime we are blaming, this is the state of apathy, consciousness level 50, right? It was the very bottom of the scale. And we want to begin to recognize when we're blaming anybody for anything or anything for our problems, okay? And with that realization, we can notice when we're blaming, we can then start to pay attention to what the payoff of blaming is. And one simple payoff that I used to get from blaming all the time was self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself. When things are going really bad, it makes things feel a little bit better when you can say, oh man, my life sucks. Poor me. You know, it's almost like you're kind of comforting yourself. Or if you get that from someone else, it's even better. Someone rubs your back and says, things are going to get better. That's the payoff we're getting. And when you tune into that payoff, you can say, oh my God, I don't want that payoff. Let me become free of that. So just becoming aware when we're in the blame game. All right. Recognizing that all of this is ego driven. Everything that we see here is created by the ego. Nothing is created by our higher selves, which is connected to allness. Okay? The ego's primary function is to be right at all times. The ego was created, or was, I don't even know, we evolved to have an ego for our own survival, right? But with the development of the prefrontal cortex, the next evolution of mankind is to transcend the ego. There's no need to demonize the ego. We just want to look at it as like a loving, enduring portion of ourselves, the animalistic side of ourselves. So when we're seeing all of this hate, all of this anger, these are all ego-driven behaviors that we have been called to transcend. And in fact, all of these issues that we're facing in the world is essentially that call. It's that call to awaking. It's a call for all of us to wake up, to become aware of all that we have bought into. And this isn't about conspiracy theories. This isn't about anything. This is about just becoming aware of what we've bought into. The next thing that I think will help give you some relief is that the world has been around for billions of years. The human race has been around for tens of thousands of years. I don't know exactly how long the human race has been around, but a long time. Okay, and we as a race have faced all kinds of hardships that are a million times worse than what we're experiencing now. And guess what? We were able to overcome them without the need for your 2 cents. Okay. So if you can put that into perspective, you might be able to tap into what I'm trying to get at here. We individually are essentially insignificant. I did a podcast last time describing the vastness of the universe, okay, and how gigantic our universe is. Just to travel across our own galaxy would take you 100,000 light years, which is traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second. That's just in our galaxy. And scientists estimate that there are 200 billion galaxies. The universe is infinite. We are this speck of dust. We're a speck on a speck in the sea of infinity. And yet we think, well, not we, the ego makes us believe that if we don't prove other people wrong, if we don't wake people up to our point of view, the world is going to come crumbling down. And this is just not the case. All great spiritual teachers taught all answers lie within. When you are troubled, when you feel like nothing is going right, it's time to look within. Okay? So learning to recognize what ego patterns you are buying into. One of the ego patterns is the need to stand on the soapbox, the need to be right. So learning to recognize what these ego patterns are and learning to look within and connect to the ultimate truth is how you become free of all of this. Freedom cannot be taken. So now what I want to do is I want to go into these 10 steps. And this is from the book, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. And I just kind of put it into my own words because Hawkins has like this vast vocabulary. And you kind of find that when you read spiritual works. I was actually just reading the Bible this morning and I read one, I don't even know what they're called in the Bible. One chapter, paragraph, and I was like, after I read it, I was like, I have no idea what I just read. Right. And so sometimes you see that in spiritual works, and this is why they lose, I think, their effectiveness, because you feel like you have to decode it. So Hawkins did a great job of writing a bunch of books that were in layman's terms, but even Hawkins had this very extensive vocabulary, and sometimes reading even a single word from Hawkins, you have to, or a single paragraph from Hawkins, you have to reread it, sit with it in order to finally fully get it. The other way that we get it, though, is through repetition. Okay, so I could introduce you to the concept of becoming aware of when you're blaming, but you may need to hear that 100 more times before it finally clicks. So today we planted the seed if you're blaming, right? Today we planted the seed of the need and the desire of the ego to stand on the soapbox. Ultimately, it comes down to this, though. While physical death is very real, the body and the mind can die, actual death is impossible. Our soul, our spirit goes on forever. We will eventually reconnect with allness and divinity. And there's actually a great series right now on Netflix called Surviving Death. And the first episode, I think, is the best. I'm not too big into mediums and psychics and this kind of thing. But, and Hawkins also advised against, using them. But the first episode is explaining people that had near-death experiences. And what they all describe essentially is they were able to see everything, and it was limitless, and there was no sensation of time. Everything was happening in a split second. They could be connecting with their mother or father that had passed, all while looking back and seeing their own body laying on the table. And this was all happening seemingly simultaneously. There was no more linearity about any of it. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just made it up. Anyways, so when you continue to go down this spiritual road, when you make it part of your life's mission to move towards enlightenment, move towards God, move towards allness, just the fact that you are aware is the first step, and it's a great gift to know that we are aware. Greater still, though, is to realize that enlightenment is possible, and even more rare is it to pursue enlightenment as a life goal. Okay, so this is ultimately what I've done with my life. Is I've surrendered. I haven't surrendered at all, but I'm continuously surrendering at all times my will to the will of God. Essentially saying every single day, what is it you want from me? And then waiting and allowing myself to be guided and paying attention to when I get into these ego-driven patterns, because the ego is a tricky little motherfucker, and it will do everything in its power to justify its existence. And when you begin to step away from the ego, it starts to scream even louder sometimes, and you can easily get pulled back into it, just like I did during this whole coronavirus pandemic and all of this, feeling the need that I need to step on the soapbox and tell people that they were wrong and I was right and they need to see it my way. I played that game with vegetarianism for my whole entire life. And it wasn't until I let go of my positionality about vegetarianism that people began really asking me about what it was I was doing and how I seemingly was able to have good health and energy for my whole entire life. Okay, and that's when people began making transformations in their own life when it came to food, right? So that force, all it does is pushes people further away. But when we look within and we transform within, we lift people up with us. This is how you create ultimate change. And this is what all of the great spiritual teachers of our time did this. People were attracted to them just by their level of consciousness. People change just in their presence. Okay? So if you want to change the world, after you've let go of your desire to change the world, the best way to change the world is change yourself. So if you're angry right now at the government and you're angry at them taking away your freedom of speech, if you're angry at these hedge funds, then it means that there's still something inside of you that is holding on to anger. If you learn to let go of the anger, then those things will no longer trigger you that are going on out there. Okay? Just the whole, as a little aside, just the whole stock thing. I found myself I used to play the stock market back in my day, and I found myself in this game. I'm not in the game, but when I heard about the GameStop and AMC and what they had done and how much the stock had risen, there was a little bit of part of me that felt like, oh, maybe I should be like looking into stocks more. But ultimately, that is back into the ego game again of getting, right? And when you're in that game, you're constantly feeling like you're missing out. You're constantly in this belief that money is scarce. It's a gambling kind of mindset. So now, like all of my stocks, my investing is just in index funds, and it's so simple. I just invest consistently. I don't care what the stock market's doing. If it goes down, I might put more money in. That is the only thing that I do. Okay. So essentially, all of this disharmony in the world is created by the ego. So you can see the importance of transcending the ego. So what is it? How do we do it? How do we begin to look within? So here's what I'm going to go into these 10 tips. So tip number 1 is be kind to everything and everyone, including yourself, at all times with zero exceptions. Seems simple enough, but how often do we catch ourselves, especially lately, getting angry, judging, being short with people that don't see things the way that we see them, right? So being kind to all things at all times with zero exceptions. Even if someone screamed in your face, you still be kind. Even if someone, that doesn't mean you allow them to continue to abuse you, but you still respectively and with kindness tell them that you're not going to allow that type of abuse or whatever it may be. Step 2, respect all of life in all its expressions, no matter what, even if you don't understand it. Okay, so this is a great example of what's going on here with the coronavirus and seeing all the negative that has come from it. So just having respect that all life is beautiful, right? Even the life of a virus, there's beauty in that life. And you're probably like, where's the beauty in the coronavirus? But ultimately, viruses are the building blocks of our survival. When we inhale a virus or get a virus in our body goes to work and begins to learn how to fight that virus off, which makes us stronger, right? So there's beauty in a virus. The Ferrari of immunity is getting the virus and allowing your body to fight it off. And then you will be immune to it forever, okay? So there's no need for us to inject other things into our body, right? Now, I'm not anti-vax. I think there is something to vaccines, but I just believe all health is within, right? So personally, I'm not going to inject myself with any vaccine, but if you want to do it, all the power to you. Like I have zero emotional charge out of that, right? So I am not going to get into an argument with anybody about vaccine or anti-vaccine because they are stuck in this belief that A causes B, which is the Newtonian paradigm, that A causes B, and that there are only two sides to the story. There are a million ways to recover from getting a virus. There are a million ways to protect yourself from getting a virus. But it's all come down to these, either you have a vaccine or you don't. And it's just so limited. So I'm not going to waste any time, or I'm not going to judge anyone either. You do whatever you want to do. So no matter what, even if you don't understand it, okay? Realize that you don't know jack shit. Obviously, this one I put into my own words. Humility is the key to continued spiritual growth. I am constantly under the belief that I know nothing. I am constantly questioning everything at all times. The only thing I want to align myself is God's will. That is it. And God's will is aligned with the truth. Okay? So, because I have this belief that I know nothing, I am forever curious. I'm constantly looking within. Is there something that I still need to surrender? Is there something I still need to learn how to let go of? Okay? So realizing you don't know jack shit, it's huge. If you ever think that you know something, then just surrender that over to a higher power. See the beauty in all that exists. So we kind of already went over that, but just seeing the beauty in everything. You can live in a world where you see beauty every second of your existence, or you can live in a world where you just see all the horrible things that are going on around you. So it's like, seems like a pretty easy choice to me. I'll just see the beauty in everything. Forgive everything that is witnessed and experienced. Okay, forgiveness is huge, right? I find actually that self-forgiveness is usually the most difficult, right? But forgiving others for all the wrongdoings is essential to continued spiritual growth. You cannot transcend the ego. You cannot move closer to God if you're still holding on to grudges, okay? So forgiving everybody, forgiving all things that you have witnessed and experienced. Forgiving yourself, I would add to that. Surrender all positionalities and arguments for gain. Pretty much already went over that. Surrender your position. I have a position that I am not going to put a vaccine in my arm. But I shouldn't say I have a position, but I have a belief that I don't need to put this vaccine in my arm. But it is not my position, because if someone was able to present me with evidence that this was going to dramatically improve my health, and they could convince me of all of the research that I have done otherwise, then I'm open to that. So I'm not tied to the position of not getting a vaccine. If someone was able to show me that it was going to be good for my health and there were zero side effects, then I would do it. Okay? But I haven't found anyone that can do that yet. So, but I'm open to it. I've surrendered my positions on it. Let go of gain, desire, and the willing to be of selfless and be willing to be of selfless service to all life. This is the toughest one, I think, on this list. Which it's only number 7, but letting go of desire is your ultimate block to getting everything that you want to get in your life. God said, Jesus said, I think it was Jesus said, or it's said multiple times throughout the Bible. And this is this podcast has gotten very gaudy, but I don't want you to get turned off by God. God is whatever your belief is, a higher understanding. I have a tattoo of Jesus on my arm. I also want to get a tattoo of Buddha on my arm. I'll probably end up getting a tattoo of Krishna, because I believe in the commonalities and amongst all of the great spiritual teachers. Okay, I'm not tied to any religion. I've let go of positions with regards to religion, Christianity, Buddhism. I've let go of positions with regards to vegetarianism, vegan. While I do eat primarily vegan diet, I don't label myself as a vegan or even a vegetarian anymore. I just eat the way I eat, and it's easy sometimes to put a label on it or explain it. But I'm completely open to changing that at any time if I am provided with new evidence that will change my mind. Letting go of all desire. So desire is best described like this. Boy or girl, let's use a boy. Boy likes a girl. He chases the girl. He buys her flowers. He calls her. He texts her. And the girl just wants nothing to do with him. Finally, after years of pursuing this girl, he finally says, you know what? Forget this girl. And then guess what happens? The girl comes running to him. Okay? Our desire is holding everything that we want to attract in our lives at arm's reach. Okay? If you could see that the way I have been able to see it, you would drop your desire in a freaking second. but I get it. It's so hard to let go of because we believe that if we let go of our desires, we won't get what it is that we seek. Okay. The next thing is letting go of any getting whatsoever, which is another really tough one. But let's just start with that. Number 8, live every day with intention, humility, and surrender. For true spirituality is a way of being. Okay, so this is ultimately what these 10 tips are about. All of these tips are a way of being in the world. Be forgiving, be loving, be compassionate, be respectful towards all life. Don't take positions. This is something that you can start doing right now. There's no more reading or learning that you need to do. Just start being a good person and making that intention every day before you walk out your door, saying, today I am going to smile at people. Today I am going to be generous. Today I'm going to be courteous. Today I'm going to be loving. Right? If we just go out into the world and be spirituality, be the principles laid out here by David Hawkins and by Buddha and Jesus, if we just be that, we are going to move up the scale of consciousness. There is no need to read any more books, although you'll probably end up wanting to, because as you begin to move up the scale of consciousness, your yearning for more connection to allness becomes greater and greater, and you'll be guided. Okay. The great thing is, though, is that as you move up the scale of consciousness, it soon becomes effortless to move up the scale of consciousness. There is no more force. It's kind of like a rocket taking off, right? When a rocket takes off, it requires a tremendous amount of force to get off the ground. And ground level is at the level 0 on the scale of consciousness. So you have to use a ton of force to get through shame and apathy and grief and guilt and fear and desire and anger. But eventually you get to this place where you no longer need any more force. You've broken through the atmosphere. Okay. And once you're in the atmosphere, the rocket just eventually is just moving on its own. There is no more force required. Okay. So that's a great thing about spiritual growth, is that it all becomes effortless. It doesn't feel like hard work anymore. It's just easy. And you keep moving towards your goal with ease. It's amazing. Okay. That was 8. Number 9, find a mentor or use your gut instinct when selecting him or her. Now, actually, I reworded that, but then I wanted to change that. So let's change that. So we want to find a good mentor, and we don't want to use our gut instinct. In some ways, we want to connect to the truth. Now, there's multiple ways to do that. There's muscle testing and these types of things. But we just want to find a teacher that is aligned with God's will and is not in the game of getting. Okay. So if we can find that teacher, it is going to help us immensely on our journey towards enlightenment. Okay. So seeking out a good teacher is critical. Having a good mentor was the critical factor that allowed me to dramatically transform my life. Okay. To move from really low states of poverty to really low states of depression, anxiety, guilt and grief, to this place now where I'm living an abundant life, where I'm free of everything that's going on out there. Although I did get wrapped up in it for a second. Okay. So, having a good mentor is essential. The great news is today is that, you don't need to be in their presence. It helps. One of my biggest regrets in my life is never going to see David Hawkins, right? So it helps if you can be in their physical presence, but now you can connect to them through books, podcasts, videos, all of these things. So finding a great mentor is critical. Except, this is number 10, accept that by choosing to grow spiritually through surrender and commitment, a knowingness will arise that will give you all the support and knowledge required. So I essentially kind of already talked about that. It's like kind of getting out of the atmosphere, and then eventually it becomes effortless, and all of the knowledge, all of the support that you require continues to flow into your life, and it's effortless. Okay. So these are the 10 principles that you can start implementing in your life right now. There's no need to go and do anything else. Just start being this way in the world, and your life will dramatically improve. Okay. The other thing I would add to this is, and this essentially is a spiritual practice. These 10 tips that I just laid out here, it's a way of being. But the other thing that I would add is when things start to unravel in your life, you want to go to some sort of spiritual practice. Okay. So what is a spiritual practice? For me, it's right now I'm doing A Course in Miracles. Okay. So A Course in Miracles is this amazing course that was created. Calibrates really high on the level of consciousness, on the scale of consciousness. I think it's at 600 or something like that. And it's a lesson a day for 365 days. So a lesson a day for every day of the year. And all you do is you read the lesson and you do whatever they tell you to do. And so that's what I do every single morning. Another spiritual practice would be to read spiritual works. Read the books of Dr. David Hawkins. Read the books of read the Bible, for example. Read Buddhist teachings. There's all kinds of spiritual work out there. Eckhart Tolle has released a bunch of good stuff. Michael A. Singer released an Untethered Soul. So there's just so much, right? There's so much information out there. And so having some sort of devotional spiritual practice that you do first thing every morning, I think is critical, especially when things begin to unravel. What happens is we start doing this and our life starts improving so much that we kind of say, I don't need that anymore. But then that's when the yarn kind of unravels. And so when the yarn unravels, go back to what was working in the beginning, right? So when I found myself getting wrapped up in all of this coronavirus stuff and thinking people were taking away my freedom, I just went back to my devotional practice, which for me is waking up early, doing some sort of spiritual devotion, which would be for me doing A Course in Miracles right now. And I'm also reading the Bible, but I don't do a ton. I mean, I do 10 minutes of Course in Miracles. I read the Bible for 10 minutes. That's all I do right now. That's what I'm doing right now. I also listen to Hawkins every day, pretty much, on audiobooks. So when I'm in my car, I'm exercising, I'm listening to the audiobook. So that would be another thing that I do. You don't have to do that much, but 10 minutes a day. I also meditate every day. But this is not, you don't have to do all of this, but you just have to do something, right? So, and this is when things are unraveling, but I would also suggest just doing it on a daily basis. If you find yourself getting wrapped up in this thing, then it's time to create some sort of spiritual practice in your life. And just having the knowledge, if you didn't up until this point, that life can become better and enlightenment is a state that you can reach in your life is huge. Because 90% of the world doesn't even have that as a goal or an intention about themselves. So just setting the intention that you want to move up the scale of consciousness is pretty much all you need to do, and all the answers will be revealed to you. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Went a little longer than usual, but I hope that was beneficial. I appreciate you taking the time. Hit me up with any questions about this, what you're struggling with. And I'd be happy to make podcasts or content relating to that. So yeah, thanks for taking the time, and look forward to getting back on here next Wednesday.